The red warning light flashed across Captain James Walker's face as he stared at the radar screen. Something was moving out there in the darkness of space, just beyond Jupiter's orbit. His ship, the Earth Defense Force vessel Thunder, had been on a routine patrol when they picked up the strange signal. "Captain, the object is about 300 kilometers ahead," reported Tom from the radar station. "It's not matching any known Earth vessels." James straightened in his command chair. After 15 years of space patrol, this was the first time he'd encountered something truly unknown. "Show me the visual," he ordered. The main screen lit up, revealing a sleek silver vessel tumbling slowly through space. Its design was like nothing he'd ever seen. Smooth curves that seemed to flow like liquid metal, with what looked like crystal formations growing from its hull. But what caught his attention were the scorch marks along its side and the debris trailing behind it. "Life signs?" James asked, leaning forward. "One, sir. Very faint." Tom's fingers flew across his console. "The ship's systems are failing. Whoever's in there doesn't have much time." James knew the protocol. Unknown vessels were to be reported and observed from a safe distance until reinforcements arrived. But something about this felt different. The ship was clearly damaged, and someone was dying in there. "Prepare the docking bay," he said firmly, "and get the medical team ready." "Sir." His first officer, Mary, stepped forward. "Regulations state." "I know what the regulations state," James cut her off gently. "But we're humanity's representatives out here. If someone needs help, we help. That's what we do." The rescue operation went smoothly. The Thunder's tractor beams stabilized the alien vessel, and they managed to dock it in their cargo bay. Security teams surrounded the entry point, weapons ready but not raised. James stood at the front, heart pounding as the airlock cycled. The alien ship's door opened with a soft hiss of escaping air. Inside, emergency lights pulsed weakly, casting strange shadows. And there, slumped over what had to be the pilot's controls, was a figure. James approached carefully, his boots echoing on the metal floor. As he got closer, he realized the pilot was female, or at least appeared female. Her skin was covered in delicate silver scales that caught the light like tiny mirrors. Instead of hair, she had what looked like fine crystalline filaments that changed color slightly as they moved. She was unconscious but breathing. Her spacesuit was torn in several places, revealing wounds that leaked a pearlescent fluid. The medical team rushed forward with a stretcher, their practiced movements hiding any surprise they might have felt at her alien appearance. As they lifted her, her eyes fluttered open. James found himself staring into irises that swirled with bioluminescent patterns, like galaxies in miniature. She reached out weakly and grabbed his arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Help," she whispered in perfect English, shocking everyone present. "They're coming." Then her eyes rolled back, and she passed out again. The medical team quickly transferred her to the stretcher and rushed her to the infirmary, leaving James standing there, staring at his arm where she had grabbed him. "Sir." Mary appeared at his side. "What are your orders?" James looked at the alien ship, then at the direction the medical team had gone. "Post guards at the infirmary. I want our best people looking after her. And get a team in here to analyze the ship carefully. Something tells me we're about to be pulled into something much bigger than a simple rescue." He touched his arm again, remembering those strange, beautiful eyes and the fear he'd seen in them. Whoever she was, whatever she was running from, she had come to them for help. And James Walker had never been one to turn away someone in need. As he walked back to the bridge, he couldn't shake the feeling that this moment would be remembered as the day everything changed. Not just for him, but for all of humanity. 3 days had passed since they rescued the alien woman. James stood outside the infirmary, watching through the observation window as Dr. Pete checked her vital signs. Her silver scales shimmered under the medical bay lights, and the crystal-like strands that replaced hair had regained their subtle color changes. "How is she?" James asked when the doctor came out. "Stable," Dr. Pete replied, looking at his tablet. Her biology is fascinating. Those scales, they're not just for show. They help her process oxygen more efficiently than human lungs. And her wounds are healing at an incredible rate. A soft chime from inside the room caught their attention. The alien woman was awake, sitting up slowly on her bed. Her galaxy-like eyes focused on James, and she pointed at him, then at the door. "She wants to talk to you, Captain," Dr. Pete said. The translator team set up their equipment inside. James entered the room, noticing how the alien woman tracked his movement. A complex machine sat next to her bed. Earth's best attempt at universal translation technology. It hadn't been tested on real aliens before. "Hello," James said clearly. "I'm Captain James Walker." The woman touched a strange device on her wrist, and a soft blue light pulsed from it. "Thank you for saving my life," she replied in slightly mechanical but clear English. "I am called Lyra." James blinked in surprise. "You can speak our language." Lyra smiled, revealing teeth that looked like small opals. "Your Earth broadcasts travel far through space. Some of us have studied them for years. Your translation device won't be necessary." She gestured at the bulky machine. "You've been watching our broadcasts." James pulled up a chair. "For how long?" "Many cycles, years, as you call them." Lyra's expression grew serious. "Your species is unique. You create stories about meeting aliens, imagining both friendship and conflict. Yet you've never lost hope in finding others among the stars." James leaned forward. "There are more species out there. Other civilizations. Many." Lyra's fingers played with the edge of her medical blanket. "Some peaceful, some not. That's why." She stopped, looking away. "Why you were running?" James prompted gently. Lyra's luminescent eyes dimmed slightly. "I cannot say much. Not yet. But know that helping me may bring danger to your ship." "We can handle danger," James assured her. "Earth Defense Force ships are well armed." A sad smile crossed Lyra's face. "Your weapons are primitive compared to what's out there. But your species has something else. Something special." Before James could ask what she meant, Tom's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, to the bridge. We're picking up unusual readings." James stood quickly. "I have to go, but we'll talk more later." "Captain," Lyra called as he reached the door. "If you see any ships with black crystal formations on their hulls, run. Don't try to fight. Just run." James nodded, noting the fear in her voice. As he hurried to the bridge, his mind raced with questions. Who was Lyra? What was she running from? And what did she mean about humans being special? On the bridge, Tom was bent over his radar screen. "Sir, 3 objects just appeared at the edge of our scanning range. They're moving fast. Configuration: unknown design, but..." Tom's face paled. "They have some kind of black crystal structures on their hulls." James remembered Lyra's warning and made his decision instantly. "Engage the engines. Get us out of here, maximum speed." As the Thunder's engines roared to life, James watched the mysterious ships on the screen. They moved with an unnatural precision, like hunters who had just spotted their prey. Whatever Lyra was running from, it had found them. The real question was, would they be able to escape it? The Thunder raced through space, engines straining as they pushed deeper into the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. 2 weeks had passed since their narrow escape from the crystal ships, and life aboard had settled into an unusual routine. James watched from the doorway of the ship's observation deck as Lyra stood before a group of crew members, teaching them about advanced star mapping. Her silver scales caught the starlight, making her seem to glow as she gestured at the holographic display she had helped them create using her knowledge. "The light patterns from distant stars can tell you more than just direction," she explained, her English now perfect after days of practice. "They can warn you of solar storms, gravity distortions, and safe paths through space." The crew listened with fascination. In just 2 weeks, Lyra had helped them improve their navigation systems beyond what Earth's best engineers had managed in years. But it wasn't just her knowledge that impressed James, it was how she fit in with the crew. "Captain," Mary approached him quietly. "We've got another situation in the mess hall." James sighed. What happened this time? Lyra tried coffee again. He couldn't help but smile. Last time Lyra had tried coffee, her scales had turned bright blue, and she'd spent 3 hours talking faster than anyone could understand. They'd learned that her species process caffeine very differently from humans. In the mess hall, they found Lyra bouncing on her toes, talking excitedly to the cook about Earth's various foods. Her scales were shifting through rainbow colors. "Lyra," James called out gently, "maybe we should stick to water for now." She turned to him, her galaxy eyes sparkling more than usual. "James, did you know humans have over 10,000 different ways to prepare food? My people only have 47, and none of them taste as good as pizza." "Come on," he said, guiding her away from the coffee machine. "Let's walk it off." They wandered the ship's corridors, Lyra gradually calming down as the caffeine worked its way through her system. Her scales slowly returned to their normal silver color. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "Your Earth drinks are very tempting." "No harm done," James assured her. "Though I think we should add coffee to the not for aliens list, along with chocolate and hot sauce." They both laughed, remembering the hot sauce incident that had left Lyra hiccuping small puffs of steam for an entire day. But their light mood vanished when the ship's alarm suddenly blared. James rushed to the nearest comm panel. "Bridge, report." Long-range sensors picked up something. "Sir," Tom's voice came through. 3 ships, same configuration as before." James felt Lyra stiffen beside him. Her scales dulled to a matte gray. Something he'd learned happened when she was afraid. "How did they find us?" she whispered. "The asteroid field should have hidden our trail." "We'll lose them again," James promised, though he wasn't sure how. The Thunder was running low on fuel after 2 weeks of evasive maneuvers. Lyra grabbed his arm, her touch sending a strange tingling sensation through his skin. "No, you don't understand. They'll never stop hunting me. I should leave, take my ship and draw them away." "That's not happening," James said firmly. "Your ship is still damaged, and you're part of this crew now. We protect our own." Her eyes widened at his words, and to his surprise, they began to fill with tears that looked like liquid starlight. "You don't even know what I am, what I've done." "I know you're someone who needs help," James replied. "That's enough for now." Before she could respond, the ship shuddered violently. Tom's voice came over the comm again, this time with clear panic. "Captain, they're not just following us anymore. They're attacking." James looked at Lyra, seeing the fear and guilt in her eyes. Whatever secret she was keeping, whatever she was running from, it had caught up with them. Now they would have to face it together. The Thunder shook violently as another energy blast struck its shields. James gripped his captain's chair, watching the 3 black crystal ships on the main screen. They moved together like a pack of wolves, their formations too perfect to be natural. "Shields at 40%. Mary called out from her station. "We can't take much more of this." James studied the enemy ships. They were larger than the Thunder, their black crystal formations seeming to absorb the light around them. But something about their attack pattern bothered him. "They're not trying to destroy us," he realized aloud. "They're hurting us." Lyra stood at the back of the bridge, her scales now almost white with fear. "They want me alive," she said quietly. "The Dominion always wants its property alive." "The Dominion?" James asked, but another blast rocked the ship before she could answer. "Engine 3 is failing," Tom shouted. "We can't maintain this speed." James looked at the tactical display. The enemy ships were driving them toward a dense cluster of asteroids. Ahead lay certain death, behind were their pursuers. But something about the asteroid field caught his attention. "Tom, those readings from the asteroids, are they magnetic?" "Yes, sir, heavily magnetized iron cores." A crazy idea formed in James's mind. It was the kind of plan that would probably get them all killed, but they were dead anyway if they did nothing. "Lyra," he called out. "Your people's ships, they use crystal-based technology, right? For navigation, weapons, everything." She nodded. "Yes, grown from living crystal. That's how they can move so perfectly together. The crystals connect their ships' minds." James allowed himself a small smile. Sometimes the most advanced technology had the simplest weaknesses. Mary, divert all remaining shield power to the engines. Tom, plot a course straight into the densest part of that asteroid field. "Sir." Mary looked at him like he was crazy. "The magnetic interference will blind our sensors. We'll be flying blind." "So will they," James replied. "But we have something they don't. Human pilots who trust their instincts." Understanding dawned on Lyra's face. "The magnetic fields. They'll disrupt the crystal networks. Their ships won't be able to communicate." "Exactly." James turned to his crew. "Everyone hold on tight. This is going to get rough." The Thunder plunged into the asteroid field. Immediately, their sensors began to fail, screens filling with static. Behind them, the enemy ships followed, their perfect formation already beginning to waver. James took manual control of the ship. Without computers, without sensors, he flew by sight and feel alone. The Thunder ducked and weaved between massive rocks, scraping past some by mere meters. The crew held their breath with each near miss. A crash echoed through space behind them. One of the pursuing ships had hit an asteroid. Then another. Their perfect coordination was shattered by the magnetic interference, their crystal technology now working against them. "Their weapons are offline," Mary reported through the static. "The magnetic field is disrupting their targeting systems." James guided the Thunder through an impossibly narrow gap between two asteroids. The ship groaned in protest, but held together. Behind them, the last enemy ship tried to follow, and became wedged between the rocks. They emerged on the other side of the field alone. The pursuing ships were trapped in the maze of magnetic asteroids, their sophisticated technology rendered useless by simple space rocks. Cheers erupted on the bridge. James let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. But when he looked back at Lyra, she wasn't celebrating. She stared at the asteroid field with tears in her luminescent eyes. "Those ships," she said, her voice trembling. "They were just the beginning. The Dominion. They control thousands of worlds, millions of ships, and now they know where Earth is." James stood and walked to her. "Then it's time you told us everything. What is the Dominion? And why are they so desperate to find you?" Lyra looked at him, starlight tears rolling down her silver scales. "Because," she whispered, "I know humanity's secret. The one thing the Dominion fears more than anything else in the galaxy." In the Thunder's quiet conference room, James sat with Lyra and his senior crew. The ship had found a temporary hiding place in the shadow of a large asteroid. Emergency repairs were underway, but everyone's attention was focused on their alien guest. Lyra's scales had taken on a deep blue color that James hadn't seen before. She looked tired, older somehow, as if a great weight pressed down on her shoulders. "Before I tell you everything," she said, "you need to understand what the Dominion is." Her fingers traced patterns on the table's surface. "Imagine an empire that spans half the galaxy. Thousands of worlds, countless species, all controlled by a single power." "How can they control so many worlds?" Mary asked. Lyra's galaxy eyes dimmed. "Through the crystals. The same technology you saw on their ships. It's not just for communication. It's for control." She touched one of her own crystal-like hair strands. "My people, the Araxians, we discovered the crystal technology centuries ago. We thought it was a gift, a way to unite all species in perfect harmony. But it wasn't," James guessed. "No," Lyra's voice cracked. "The crystals, they can link minds, create perfect unity. But the Dominion turned this gift into a weapon. They found a way to use the crystals to control other species completely. One by one, civilizations fell under their influence. Even my own people couldn't resist. Tom leaned forward. But you escaped? I was part of their scientific council, Lyra said, leading research into why some individuals could resist the crystal control. That's when I discovered. She stopped, suddenly standing up and walking to the window. James watched her stare out at the stars. What did you discover, Lyra? She turned back to them, and without warning, rushed forward to grab James in a tight embrace. He felt her tears, warm like starlight, soaking into his uniform. The crew started to rise, but he motioned them to stay seated. Humans, Lyra whispered against his shoulder. It's humans. You're completely immune to the crystal control. Something in your brains, in your very DNA, rejects all attempts at mental domination. The Dominion can't control you, can't predict you, can't understand you. She pulled back, her tears leaving glowing trails on her silver scales. Do you understand? In all the galaxy, across thousands of species, humans are the only ones who can't be controlled. The only ones who remain truly free. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. James felt the weight of this revelation pressing down on him. That's why you came to Earth, he said softly. Not to hide. To find hope. Lyra finished. The Resistance, yes, there is one, has been fighting the Dominion for decades. But we're losing. We need humans. Your immunity, your unpredictability, your strange ability to find solutions where none seem to exist. She gestured at the asteroid field behind them. Like what you did back there. No other species would have thought to use simple magnetic fields against advanced crystal technology. And now the Dominion knows about us, Mary said. Lyra nodded. They'd been watching Earth from afar, afraid to approach because they couldn't understand you. But now they know you're immune. They'll come in force. They can't allow a species to exist that they can't control. James stood up, his decision already made. How long do we have? Days, maybe weeks. They'll gather their fleet first. They've never failed to conquer a world, and they won't take chances with Earth. Then we need to warn Earth, James said, but not just about the threat. He looked around at his crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that he felt. We need to tell them about the Resistance, about our advantage. Humanity needs to know that we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for the freedom of every species in the galaxy. Lyra's scales shifted to a deep purple color as she smiled through her tears. I knew I made the right choice coming to humans first. You don't just survive, you stand up for others. That's why the Dominion fears you. That's why you're our last hope. The Thunder's warning sirens blared as 5 massive Dominion warships emerged from faster-than-light travel. Each one was 3 times the size of the Earth vessel, their black crystal formations creating a terrifying sight against the starlit void. They found us faster than expected, Lyra said, her scales pulsing with anxiety as she stood on the bridge. These are their elite ships. James studied the tactical display. They were still 6 hours from Earth, too far to call for help. The Thunder was alone against overwhelming odds. But James had a plan, a crazy human plan. Tom, set course for the gas giant, he ordered, pointing to a large planet nearby. Mary, kit me everything you can from the engines. Lyra, I need to know these ships' weaknesses. Their crystal networks are their strength, but also their weakness, Lyra explained quickly. They think and move as one. They can't comprehend individual action. James smiled. Then let's show them how unpredictable humans can be. Battle stations, everyone. The Thunder accelerated toward the gas giant, the Dominion ships following in perfect formation. Their crystal weapons fired, sending pulses of energy that the Thunder barely dodged. Sir, Tom called out, the planet's gravity weld is affecting our engines. Good, James replied, surprising everyone. Take us into the atmosphere. Skim the surface. Lyra's eyes widened. The pressure at that depth will crush us. Not if we time it right, James said. The Dominion ships are linked, right? They copy each other's movements perfectly. Understanding dawned on Lyra's face. Yes, and they're bigger than us. The pressure would affect them more. The thunder dove into the gas giant's swirling clouds. Alarms screamed as the hull groaned under the increasing pressure. Behind them, the Dominion ships followed in their exact same path, their crystal network forcing them to move as one. Hull pressure reaching critical, Mary shouted. Just a few more seconds, James said through gritted teeth. The ship shuddered violently as they pushed deeper into the atmosphere. Then, at the last possible moment, James yelled, "Now! Full power to engines! Take us up!" The Thunder's engines roared as they pulled up sharply, fighting against the planet's gravity. The smaller ships struggled but managed to climb. Behind them, the larger Dominion ships tried to copy the same maneuver, but their size worked against them. The first explosion lit up the atmosphere as one of the Dominion ships' hull gave way under the pressure. The crystal network, trying to maintain perfect unity, forced the other ships to match the failing ship's movements. One by one, they began to break apart. "It's working," Lyra exclaimed, her scales glowing bright silver with excitement. "Their need for perfect coordination is destroying them." The thunder burst out of the atmosphere, engines straining but intact. Behind them, the gas giant's clouds were lit by multiple explosions as the Dominion fleet tore itself apart. When the light faded, only one Dominion ship remained, its crystal networks visibly damaged. It turned and flowed into faster-than-light speed, disappearing among the stars. Cheers erupted on the bridge. James let out a long breath, feeling the tension drain from his shoulders. They had won, not through superior technology or weapons, but through the one thing that made humans special, their ability to act independently and unpredictably. "Amazing," Lyra whispered, staring at the gas giant where their pursuers had met their end. No other species would have thought to use a planet's atmosphere as a weapon. No other species would have dared to fly so close to destruction. James turned to her. "The survivor will warn the Dominion. They'll know now that Earth isn't defenseless." "Yes," Lyra replied, her galaxy eyes shining with hope. "And they'll know something even more important. They'll know that their perfect unity can be defeated by human unpredictability. The resistance will grow stronger when they hear of this." "Then let's make sure they hear of it," James said. "Set course for Earth. It's time to prepare humanity for its role in the galaxy." The Earth Defense Force headquarters was packed with military leaders, scientists, and government officials from around the world. They had gathered in the main conference room, all eyes fixed on the strange silver-scaled woman standing beside Captain James Walker. Lyra's scales shimmered under the bright lights as she finished explaining about the Dominion, the Resistance, and humanity's unique immunity to crystal control. The room had been silent throughout her presentation, but now the questions began. "How can we trust this information?" a general asked. "This could be a trick." James stepped forward. "The Thunder's logs confirm everything. We faced their ships, saw their technology in action, and more importantly, we defeated them using the very unpredictability that Lyra says makes humans special. The Resistance has bases hidden throughout the galaxy," Lyra added. "We have ships, weapons, and most importantly, knowledge of the Dominion's weaknesses. But what we lack is the one thing Earth has in abundance: minds that can truly think freely." A scientist raised her hand. "You mentioned the crystal technology affects all known species except humans. Could we use this immunity to help others?" Lyra's galaxy eyes brightened. "That's exactly why I came here first. My research suggests that prolonged exposure to humans can help other species resist the crystal control. You don't just have immunity, you spread it." Murmurs filled the room. James watched as the implications sank in. Humanity wouldn't just be fighting for itself, it would be leading the charge to free countless enslaved civilizations. "The Dominion will come," James said, his voice carrying across the room. "They'll come with everything they have. but they'll find something they've never faced before. A species that doesn't fight with perfect coordination, but with creativity and individual thought. He pressed a button, showing images from the Thunder's battle. Their ships move in perfect formation, think as one mind. But that's their weakness. When we divided them, confused them, forced them to face situations their unified thinking couldn't handle, they fell apart. We've already begun adapting Earth's defenses based on what we learned, Mary added from her seat. The Thunder's encounter proved that simpler technologies, used creatively, can overcome their advanced systems. A diplomat stood up. What you're suggesting? It would mean revealing ourselves to the galaxy at large. Humanity would be thrust onto an interstellar stage we didn't even know existed. Yes, Lyra said softly. But you won't be alone. She turned to face the room. The Resistance has waited generations for this moment. When word spreads that humans have successfully defeated Dominion ships, that Earth is willing to stand against them, others will find the courage to join us. James looked out at the assembled leaders. We didn't ask for this fight. But throughout human history, whenever we've encountered oppression and injustice, we've stood up against it, not because it was easy, but because it was right. Lyra suddenly reached out and grabbed his hand. Her touch sent that familiar tingling sensation through his skin, but this time he saw tears of joy in her eyes. When I first came to Earth, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the room, I held this man and cried because I had found hope. Now I cry because I see that hope spreading through this room, through your whole species. The Earth Defense Force commander stood up. Captain Walker, how long until the Dominion fleet arrives? A month, maybe 2, James replied. They'll gather their forces first. Then we have work to do. The commander looked around the room. Humanity just became the front line in a galaxy-wide fight for freedom. Let's show the Dominion why they were right to fear us. As the room erupted in determined activity, James looked at Lyra. Her scales were glowing with a bright, silvery light he'd never seen before. Ready to help us change the galaxy? He asked. Lyra smiled, her galaxy eyes shining. Humans never cease to amaze me. The Dominion thinks in terms of control and unity. But you think in terms of freedom and possibility. That's why you'll win. Looking out at Earth through the conference room's windows, James knew she was right. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its diversity, its unpredictability, its endless capacity to surprise. Now those very qualities would help free the galaxy. The real adventure was just beginning.